Have you heard the expression, the older we get, the harder it is to lose weight? Well, you may know that to be true. And so today we're really going to hone in on weight loss resistance, on how to reduce that stubborn belly fat so you feel at home in your body. I mean, we want to feel and be at a healthy weight, have a healthy self image. And certainly there are many factors that come into this. And then why is it harder to lose weight in midlife? What are those challenges? How does that change post-menopause? I mean, it's an important discussion to have. Also, what are some of the strategies that are effective and safe and work towards optimizing your health so that you can live a quality, long, healthy life? I mean, we want all that stuff. So let's talk about weight loss resistance. And we're also going to touch on a few other topics in this interview because I'm bringing one of my good friends on, Marcelle Pick. Marcelle Pick is a founder of Woman to Woman way back in 1983, a women's health clinic, which was soon joined by Dr. Christiane Northrup. And she practices up in Maine. I was able to go visit her up in Portland, Maine. And she really has been a pioneer and a trailblazer in women's health and integrative women's health care. She has been a leader in functional medicine. She's actually a practitioner and one of the professors or the faculty at the Institute of Functional Medicine. She served as a medical advisor to Healthy Living magazine. She writes a weekly newsletter and lectures on topics like weight loss, infertility, and adrenal dysfunction. She's the author of several books, including The Core Balanced Diet. She's appeared on Dr. Oz, Fox News, ABC, as well as being featured in Glamour and Elle. Her PBS show, Is It Me or My Hormones, is a viewer favorite. So join me in welcoming Marcelle Pick. Welcome, Marcelle. It is so good to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so I'm glad I'm here.
Me too. Me too. I enjoyed the time I got to spend at your place in Maine and Portland. It was just wonderful. So, this is like the always like this is truly a girlfriend doctor show episode, everyone. This truly is. And Marcel's been a pioneer leader in the functional medicine space way back, I think, in early 2000, maybe one, two, three, something like that. I heard her speak and or 2004. And I heard her speak at with IFM or functional medicine. And of course, I'd learned about her work too. From the clinic with Dr. Christiane Northrup. So I'd love for you to give our audience a little bit about background in your
Sure.
story.
Yeah, I was talking about this to someone the other day. It's kind of funny. So in 1983, there were another nurse practitioner and I started the clinic called Women to Women. And then Chris Northrup and her partner, Ellen Fenn, joined us and we opened a clinic in Yarmouth, Maine. And we were the first all women's practice in the country. Can you believe it? We had
Wow.
special attorneys in Colorado to kind of help us orchestrate it. And all the guys around said women will never come to women. And we were one of the fastest growing practices in Maine. And at the time, what we wanted to do was avail women knowledge about their bodies so that they could become their own midwives for their own health.
Mm.
And we had people have their own test results. We gave them lots of information when they came in. At the time, it was paper, and wanted them to become empowered. And we were a very, very fast growing practices to the point that we sometimes had 5 and 6 practitioners on board, including Bethany Hayes,
Oh,
who
Bethany
did
Hayes, the
OB there.
trailblazer.
And she had a midwife with her. And it was just and the other thing that we did is we all had children. So we actually had playpens around the office. And I had a backpack when I was doing my exams, and it was just very, very centered around, women, but also having it be a space in which we could do as much healing as we could and urge women to learn about their bodies as much as they could so that they could really take steps they needed to get healthy.
And I think that, that concept of integrating family care into your medical practice as a woman, I mean, until I went into when I went into my solo practice, I was able to have a nanny come to the practice. So you don't feel separated from your
Right.
kids. I mean,
Right.
now they're a teenager. I'm like, oh yeah, I can separate. But no, but it's like, there's there's benefits, pros and cons to that for sure, but I think much more pros. So the fact that, especially if that's what you want. And so you're in harmony with, having that time and that ability to connect at the office. For me, in our um, um, offices in Georgia that we still have there for our production and our manufacturing, there's there's been the option to bring their child in. So one of our ladies, pretty much, for years, but it's another, now she's my goddaughter, right? So it's a really beautiful gift, as when it works that way. So
I think that it was so hard for me to have that separation because I'm wanting to be home with the baby. They wanted to be at work as well to help women. And then I was on call. And at the time that I was on call, we didn't have cell phones. So I was kind of at home. And when we had a cell phone, it was this big and it was clunky. And I was so excited because I could take the kids out and go outside when I was on call. So it really avails you the ability to stay connected to family. And then also, that's what we do. That's what we women want, is to have both available to us.
we want to see a beautiful transformation in health and women's health, especially, and generally in medicine. And so one of the number one, there's two chief complaints I often hear from women, and that is fatigue, a decrease in energy, like just exhaustion, or can't do what I used to do. And the other is I can't get rid of these stubborn pounds, or I'm gaining weight without doing anything different. And you've been working with women's health, metabolism, functional medicine from a functional medicine perspective for a long, long time. And so let's talk about some of those reasons, those etiologies, and how you're
Mhm.
addressing it now. Because what, 40 years in practice, dare I say?
Crazy woman that I am, and I'm still doing it. Yeah, 40 years. I think it may even be more than that, but yeah, it's 40 years. So, it was also my own struggle that got me so interested in this. Is I was kind of exercising and counting calories and counting points and just not losing weight, but had an enormous amount of stress at the time. And I think that unfortunately we women are so hard on ourselves. We expect so much, and we also push ourselves to extreme at times. And if we have any kind of adrenal dysfunction, it will absolutely stop weight loss. The body goes into fight flight and holds on to every calorie. And I see more women undereat, especially those that are trying so hard to lose weight. And believe it or not, for some of those, I might have them do breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. I know snacks are not really
I'm
appropriate, but to get that metabolism working, and I'll have them do carbs, in the morning, but not in the afternoon or evening. And then just very gently with themselves, lovingly with themselves, if they have adrenal issues, to really reintroduce more calories into their diet. If they have adrenal issues, I don't want their heart rate over 90. And to really be mindful of getting really good sleep, making sure that their heart rate variability is good on a regular basis, so that they're using either an Oura ring, which I have, or a watch or whatever.
Whoop
And then
band. Yeah.
finding out what's going on, because I think so many times, and I was talking to somebody in my office today, well, I've got grandkids now and I take care of the grandkids and I haven't been able to go to the gym because I really feel responsible for them. So the first line of offense is looking at adrenal function.
Well, let's talk about that. So what is adrenal dysfunction? Because we used to use the term adrenal fatigue, and then I
I
think we
know. Yeah.
shifted to adrenal dysfunction, hypofunction, hyperfunction,
Yeah.
dysfunction works.
Whatever
So
you want to call it. Yeah.
but where adrenal fatigue was really a misnomer in a way.
It was. I mean, your heart gets fatigued? I don't think so. So we know that we cannot live without stress. We have to have a small amount of stress for us to survive. And as a culture, though, as time's gone on, what's happened is we can see the news when it happens. We can see fighting, shooting. We have the political. We had, a lot of stuff going on with COVID, vaccine, no vac. I mean, all of this going on. And we women are mothers, we're caretakers, we have children, we have jobs, and now we're CEOs of companies. All of that pushes our body to the extreme. So we have these adrenal glands that sit on top of the kidneys. We don't really talk about them very much in medicine. In fact, we hardly ever do. And those adrenal glands help us in a state of either overdrive or underdrive. And we have a parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system that kind of is our balance system. So we have our fight flight, which is a sympathetic nervous system, and then we have the brakes, which is a parasympathetic. The problem is we don't have enough of the brakes. If we look at, there's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get, what is it?
Ulcers, why zebras don't get
Ulcers. Thank you
ulcers.
very much. So if we look at animals and they're in the wild and they're being chased by a tiger, oftentimes they'll either be killed or they will go back to the same place where they were grazing. We adults think about a situation over and over and over again, and our body doesn't know the difference between present day stress and past day stress. Now, that also is true for our childhood. So if we grow up in a situation in which you're perfectionism, perfect, because we want it to make things calm at home, that's great when you're growing up. It's not so great when you're an adult. So that causes us to always feel like we need to be perfect. And you know what that does to cortisol? Not great things. So then we may have high cortisol levels, and at some point, those levels may come very low. And what happens then is you get up and go as get up and gone. You don't
Mhm.
have energy in the morning. You're exhausted in the afternoon. I'm a ballroom dancer, and somebody will say, "You want to go dancing?" And if I was fine, I'd be like, "Yeah, what time does it start? 8, 9? Okay, no problem." Somebody else would say, "No, the couch is calling me." Those give us kind of a query about whether adrenals are a part of the puzzle. And we can only do that testing really through saliva. If we do it through blood, we only get one fixed number. And cortisol has a pattern to it. It's high in the morning and low at night. If I don't see what those numbers are, I don't know where they are. Are they what I call a racehorse? They're up all the time, or are they a workhorse up and down, or are they flatlined? Those all play enormously into weight loss.
Yeah, and I use urinary cortisol assessment. I'll look at the
Yep.
diurnal pattern and a urinary assessment. And so looking at it these different ways makes a big difference. It was funny. I had Dr. Will Cole on my podcast recently, and he had a social media post that said, "Are you lazy or burnout?" And I love that. And it's like you're not lazy. It's physiology affects behavior, and that's what you're saying. It's like checking into yourself. Now, Marcelle, like, you are very intuitive. So in an intuitive way, how do you check to see, for yourself, doing all the things that you're doing? How do you, what is an intuitive way to check in? Am I burnout? Is it just lack of motivation? Is it,
Um, I think that's a complicated question because if you aren't able to kind of check in yourself, it's very, very hard to know the difference. And you might need to
Mhm.
have a friend be able to help you. When you start to know about your body well enough, and that takes a long time, it takes years of trusting yourself, then you can probably ask the question. But if you find that you sleep well and you wake up in the morning exhausted, I'd wonder about that. If you are in the afternoon, just go and just have that sense. I'm not just talking about tired, I'm talking about exhausted. Or if you get up from the couch and you get up quickly and you feel like you're going to pass out, those are all indicators that the adrenals are not in great shape. If you're racing and can't get to sleep, and you find at nighttime you can't, fall asleep very easily, those might be indicators also. And also, if you do what I call looping, you worry, worry, worry about things, those things also create problems. Do you have a spiritual practice? It doesn't matter what it is, but do you have any kind of spiritual connection? Because we have a very fast-paced world and we're not tuning in to find out for ourselves what is true for me. Are you happy? Do you have sweetness in your life? Are you able to really have a really healthy diet, or are you always on a diet? Because that is a message for the body. And I see a lot of women my age. I grew up with Twiggy, and they have been on every diet known to mankind. And no wonder they're not losing weight because they're not feeding themselves properly or often. I'm going to starve myself, and then if I'm hungry, I'll eat, and then they'll eat one meal a day or not even that. That will never work. This poor body. We don't do cars. If the car's running out of gas, we can put gas in it. So we need to do the same for our bodies as well. So the biggest thing is looking at adrenal function. And then there's a number of other things that can contribute to them not being able to lose weight. But the myth that you get older and you can't get smaller is absolutely incorrect. We just have to figure out what it is for you that's the problem.
That's that detective work. So other than adrenal, what have you found to be most common areas
Absolutely.
that
So if you have mold toxicity, it's a huge
yeah.
problem. You will not be able to lose weight. Lyme disease in my area is enormous. I mean, I have people that have gained 40 pounds in 3 months, 2 months, and they didn't do anything differently. They just got, I have somebody in my practice right now. And also, if we have issues around the gut microbiome, we know that if we have people that have fecal transplants, I know it sounds horrible, 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 I know, but spare me here.
Well,
Um,
it's some
it's the thing, it
it's
works incredibly
right.
well for C. diff, C. diff in particular.
And Pseudomonas, right?
And oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if we have somebody that's obese, who gets a fecal transplant for somebody that's thinner,
Okay, so to clarify, fecal transplant is basically you're getting someone else's poop
sterilized. Yeah,
sterilized,
yeah.
put into your colon.
Yes. And they actually now have tablets for it, but nonetheless, they were doing
Yeah,
it
there
with,
are.
with
There are.
enemas. Yeah. And what happened is those people got thinner. So we didn't change anything but the microbiome of the gut. And we have thousands and thousands and thousands of bacteria in our body. Some of them we don't even know the names of. So we're just starting to understand that delivery system. So the gut microbiome might be off. You might have small bowel overgrowth called SIBO. You may have a parasite, you may have a worm, all of which can then contribute. But then we have the emotions in there. We have a food industry that is not our friend, and we have enormous money that's being spent on putting particular things in our foods that actually create us to have more than one. We don't eat one potato chip. We don't eat one French fry, especially in America, because we have so many other additives to them. We don't have one Oreo. We haven't, and it's,
I know, like those truffle fries are my Achilles heel, Marcel, I'm telling you.
geez, I
But
know.
gliadomorphines, how do you say it? Cassiomorphines?
Cassiomorphines, yeah.
Cassiomorphines from dairy, gliadomorphines from gluten. And I mean, it's a true addiction. It's more like it is that morphine-like substance, that addiction, and where people have compared it as the addiction as with heroin, for instance.
Yeah,
So getting, you know, clearing ourselves from that, interrupting
absolutely.
those addictive pathways
Yeah.
and removing the source of that is a powerful piece of
Hands
healing.
down. And I think also so many women have been on points, calories, macros, more exercise, changing their diet, looking at every single calorie they put in their mouth. And what happens then is they develop something what I call food noise.
Mm.
They're thinking about it 24/7. And, a number of people have talked about the weight loss drugs that they stop that noise. We can
So
also
we're
stop
talking
that
about like
noise.
the GLP-1s.
Yes,
Because
the
we want to get into
GLP-1s.
that a little bit and understand your perspective on that too. But so with the GLP-1s, now way back, it was very interesting that a bariatric surgeon in Atlanta um, had been involved in research. And one of the things he commented on, he goes, with laparoscopic banding of, gastric banding, et cetera, the results were significant because they affected GLP-1. And so that was one of the ways it worked until it didn't work anymore. And then that, hence the weight gain, the weight return, or the so-called failed procedure. And so we've known about GLP-1 for
Yeah.
more than 20 years, well, around 20 years now. So that was early 2000s that I heard about that research and had that discussion.
It's interesting because there's a lot of foods that we eat that are bitter, and we don't eat many bitter foods anymore that also increase GLP-1s. And we know that berberine now, do they do it to the same degree that the weight loss drugs do? They don't. And I'd be lying to say that they did. But, oftentimes we also damp the noise of GLPs by the quality of the food that we're eating and the emulsifiers in the food. All of those things, unfortunately, also dampen that GLP-1. And I do genetic testing on my patients around food issues. And what I see is there are some that have the gene that's kind of the shut-off valve. They don't have that shut-off valve. So it's really understanding, again, in my mind, teaching women about their bodies, that if they know that about themselves, I had that I need to have a plate that's filled with vegetables. I use, oftentimes chopsticks to eat my food so that I go slowly with it. And all of us in medicine eat too fast, but because we've always had to be in a hurry. So
Hmm.
there's ways that you know about yourself that you can kind of make those shifts so some of the genetic snips that we have that might make us a little different than someone else. We can work with that and understand about ourselves then how to do it differently. So there are so many pieces to this puzzle about this weight loss, and it's not just a matter of what we know how to fix it now. It just doesn't work that way. It never has, and it probably never will. But there are ways that we can help quiet that noise of food, that we can help suppress that appetite that might be there, so we can teach people how to eat a little differently with more of the bitter foods and lovely, delicious meals, no longer on a diet, because we want to have healthy fats and healthy food for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that about bitters too, that stimulate GLP-1. Again, not, to no extent compared to the injections, for instance, but bitters were really part of traditional foods and
Right.
lifestyles. And one of the things that, I had learned was about bitter melon. And in India, bitter melon is everywhere. And it's this really ugly zucchini looking like thing with all these rivets in it, and it's incredibly bitter. And then you can slice it, saute it, and season it, and it helps get those gastric juices going. And many medicinal drinks or alcoholic drinks had bitters in it, like part of the medicinal intent of the formulation, possibly. I don't know.
Mhm. Well, the other thing is using allulose. That also is very helpful at glucose control, but it also stimulates GLP-1 as well. So it's kind of got a combination of things that you can use it for, at the
What
same
is
time.
allulose in?
Allulose, it's actually a product. It's a sweetener that you can use. It's tastes very sweet if you have a little. If you put it in a food, it doesn't sweeten it that often, but it's got some very interesting research on it now. One of the things that I will suggest to my patients is if they're having a more of a carb meal, that they actually use the allulose, and it really is very helpful in stabilizing blood sugars. You can see it on the continuous glucose monitors. So it's just another way to do that. And it's by RX Sugar. You've probably heard of them before. And it's a company that's got some very interesting documentation on how effective allulose can be. So using bitters and using berberine and then using some allulose and then also changing the kind of food that you have, that shifts that dynamic of wanting to have more also, which is very helpful.
And I think it's important to understand that food noise, because when we prescribe the GLP-1s and clients like, oh, I no longer have that food noise. And if we're using it as a crutch to get that opportunity to clean up the food sensitivities, to clean up the gut, to improve insulin sensitivity, though that's an important aspect while on, I mean, a crucial, in my opinion, critical aspect when on GLP-1s, for certainly. And there's talk, we can go micro dosing or whatever dosing, it doesn't matter. You got to clean up that issue. You got to address the issues, because we want to maintain our results, right? We want to maintain our results. There other options is, I've been an advocate for keto-green since created it way back in 2014, is what you've been doing now with working with homeopathics and stubborn weight loss resistance. So I'd love for you to share with our audience about what you're doing.
Sure, no, I'd love to. I've always been interested since 1983 to find out what do we have for solutions that are going to make a difference. And I myself was sick of not having clothes to fit. I go in my closet, nothing I could wear. I didn't want to have my picture taken. I didn't want to go out in public. And it was just so frustrating to me because I was doing it all right, counting points, calories, exercise. And then back in the day, you probably remember when we had HCG. And HCG is human chorionic gonadotropin. It's a hormone that we have a lot of when we're pregnant. And it was very effective to use when people weren't pregnant. And what happened is they lost a lot of weight and they also gained it all back. So at that time, I realized I needed to create something that took the noise of food away, that decreased appetite, but also allowed women to lose weight relatively quickly. So 99% of my people, unless they have adrenal issues, they lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks and 35 to 50 in 12. That keeps them motivated. So I then have 12 weeks to work with them because my programs can be 12 weeks to say, so what's been the problem? Was it dairy? Was it gluten? Was it sugar? Was it using food for
Mhm.
comfort? Was it not
Mhm.
enough sweetness in your life?
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example of somebody who was in the program, and she said, I'm always, even though I'm not hungry, I'm always binging at night. And so we got very deep into, so what as a child happened to you? And there was a lot of screaming, yelling, and actually some even hitting of with the parents. So she used food for comfort. So as she started to understand that dynamic, it was a real, oh my God, for her. And we all perhaps have some of that to some degree. Some people use food as comfort and some don't. But when we understand those pieces and we take the noise of food away, it's so compelling. But we also have one more thing, and that is, what do I need? Am I keto? Am I paleo? I'm a low fatter. I don't feel well at all doing a keto diet. It's too high fat for me. And when we understand that we're all a little bit different, then it really helps us. Doing keto greens is a different story, but the kind of food plan, are you Mediterranean, low fat, low carb, or balanced? And interestingly enough, very few people are balanced. It's like, well, that's weird. But when I've done, and I've done over 3,000 of these genetic profiles looking to see what people do, and about 70% of my people keep the weight off. There's nothing out there like that.
Mhm.
And, the part that's distressing to me about the GLP-1s when we use them is there was a study that was done looking at heart rate variability. And what it did was it decreased heart rate variability. It also, if we look at the study of bone densities go down. Those are things I don't want in my patient population. So when we're using it longer term, and that's why I worry about if we have to stay on them to keep the weight off, because many people gain it back when they stop the medication plus about 10 pounds. What are we really doing as we do a deep dive into the GLPs? I'm talking about the, Mounjaro, Wegovy injections. I'm not talking about microdosing because I don't know enough about that to speak about that. But I'm very, very concerned about the long-term results that we're going to find. And I don't know anybody yet that's got a practice in which they use it short term and they're really transitioning them out successfully with a large number of people. So if we're decreasing heart rate variability, we're decreasing bone, we're changing the integrity of the quality of the skin with less stem cells and less collagen, and we're also decreasing muscle mass. Are we really helping? Yes, they're thinner, which is what we want, and we women are crazy about that. But are we really compromising our health and well-being? I'm concerned that we are. Do we need to find another alternative? We do, because we are tired of trying and having nothing be successful and the noise of food, and you can't go in your closet to find clothes. We're tired of it, but we're also tired of counting points,
Yep.
macros, every diet under the sun. Maybe this is, oh, I'm looking at the newsstand, looking at this magazine. Maybe this is the answer this time. It's like, no, there's no magic. And we're all different. So we all need something that really helps each of us individually to figure out what our piece is. Now, there's something also very interesting, and that is that we looked at the ACE study, Dr. Folletti, who did the ACE study, and that was in 2000, or it was actually 1989, 1999. And what they found is he was working with very obese women. He put them on a water or a medical food diet. They were all losing so much weight. He was so excited, 50% dropped out. He had one of the women come back, and then he did all of the women. And he wanted to ask her the question, how old were you? And what he said instead is, how much did you weigh when you were first sexually active? And she said 30 pounds. He then started doing a deep dive into how many of these morbidly obese were sexually abused as children. It was 85%. So is there a relationship then? Does that mean if you're morbidly obese, you have that? Absolutely not. But what I'm
And
saying
I
is
think,
sometimes we have need a protection for ourselves.
yeah, and this concept of ACE. So for ACE study, the adverse childhood experiences study, and that adverse childhood experiences. So I mean, I think addressing when it comes to food noise. It's like, where are those cravings coming from? Where's that noise coming from? Where's the trauma that needs to be healed? What's going on? And I think this is where for me, it is a relief to say, okay, I'm not broken. There's, maybe there may be some cracks, but I'm repairable, right? I've got to address these underlying issues and put and be that detective. I always tell my audience, you got to put your Nancy Drew hat on. So be that detective, figure out, okay, what's going on? Could it be this? And doing the work to heal from that, whether it's with EMDR, emotional freedom technique, good integrative therapy with ketamine. I mean, there's a lot that can be
Absolutely.
worked on to help rewire, because those patterns can sometimes be very, very ingrained into us. So the noise, where's it coming from? And then, of course, the concept of what's been normal in America to eat with preservatives and food colorings and and flavorings. I mean, we can prove those to be neurotoxic. That's adding noise. It's like, you're having to wade through sludge sometimes. So cleaning that up and feeling empowered is really important. And so I want to talk about, because I was visiting Marcelle with a bunch of my other girlfriend doctors. And she's like, okay, me and my friend Angela are like, okay, we're going to do Marcelle's program for 20 days in the window of time that we had. And it's basically, for me, it was basically, okay, it's keto-green, but without the fat. Like I'm taking a complete fat break and adding the homeopathic drops. So, which kind of reminded me, like the way it was no fat, reminded me, early in my medical practice, I used to use the HCG diet for clients for a while. And in that, that was pre GLP-1s. HCG was another thing. It could help, could hurt, all of that good stuff, and for another time. But that very 500 calories, HCG injections, no fat, right? We were very, very careful. And yours is more keto green, not really quantity restricted per se, and it is with the homeopathic drop. So I thought it was very interesting. I think homeopathy is incredible. Part of my world journeys, I met with a homeopathic psychiatrist, and it was very interesting, the work that's been done in homeopathy for, especially, and this was in Germany, but from the German monographs from, you know, 1970s. So yeah,
Or even 1880s. I mean, I used one of those for
1880s.
my homeopathic pharmacopoeia that I developed. I think that unfortunately, sometimes in allopathic medicine, we forget to pull all those things in at the same time. We're complicated beings. We do have things that can trigger us to have that body just go into that freeze state. And anybody that's struggling to lose weight, we have to help them. Number one, it's not your fault. A lot of times I have a chapter in one of the books I wrote, Your Issues Are in Your Tissues, is really looking at what is it for you? And to be very loving with yourself instead of beating yourself up. Sweetheart, darling, we're gonna figure this out. And really doing it in a loving way as opposed to punitive, which we tend to do to ourselves on a regular basis.
And so in the combination of homeopathic drops, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like what and
Sure.
how you guide, how you do
Yeah,
the
so I
work with
created the drops, and there is no HCG in them. And I use some homeopathic hypothalamus, which actually affects the appetite. So you are not hungry, you don't have cravings, and the really important part is you don't have the noise of food goes away. The irony is that I also put some things in to help with inflammation and detoxification. So if you're losing weight relatively quickly, um, then you don't have the toxicity issues of the what we have in our fat stores still available to us. Then we also combine that with no fat. So you might do egg whites for breakfast with vegetables, and lunch would be a protein with vegetables, dinner a protein with vegetables, and 2 fruits a day. And I have a recipe book, and I really encourage, and I do a coaching call myself, to have fun with it, to enjoy it, to have your meals taste good. instead of just have a piece of chicken and some just kind of yucky steamed green beans. It's not very appealing. So it would be really looking at, how do I have versatility? How do I start enjoying real foods? How do I learn to use a glass air fryer so that I can cook my meals relatively quickly? I made some some cauliflower the other night, and I used nutritional yeast, and I used a little bit of almond milk and some chicken broth, and I made a paste, and I put it on them and put them in the broiler, and they were yummy. My company was like wanting more. Those are the kinds of things that we can do on a regular basis. It doesn't take any time at all, because sometimes we're pretty busy, so we can't do that stuff. So it's very simple. And it's just a matter of saying, you know what, it's my time. I want to do this for me. I want to figure this out for myself. I want this to be the last bloody diet I ever go on. And I want to learn what my body needs to maintain that weight. And that's the key piece. And a lot of times, honestly, is we're not eating enough. And sometimes we're just trying so hard because we want it so badly, and
Right.
we're not eating enough. So I
And
urge people to not do that.
yeah, and then yet, with the work on muscle physiology and protein intake of zero point 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, how do what's your experience with that? What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that completely. But again, we have to kind of see people's physiology, how they do. And when I find out their genetic profile, I might back off a little bit on the protein if they're a little fatter, or, be more inclined for a paleo. So I will work with people individually to figure out what's that sweet spot for them. And then when they know their genetics, they can understand it, because then they know for themselves. But you know what? We're all different. So you may find, you know what? 5 ounces of protein for me at lunch is amazing. Six, not so much. I feel like I'm craving sugar, and it's kind of that Ayurvedic imbalance that's going on. So it's also learning for yourself and trusting yourself, just like you said before, is how do I intuitively know for me what it is that my body needs? And that comes with age, trusting yourself, and experimenting also, and not being punitive. Starvation diets are not a really good thing. And, I'm not a big fan of the GLP-1s. I'm really not. I really am worried about what we're going to see long term, especially with some of the most recent studies. I think I gave you the information on that deep dive, and I'll be glad to send it to you again, looking at so what's really going on physiologically here, so that we can really support women. But we need to have an option. If there's a lot of
Right.
food noise, it's not fair. So what do we need to do to help with that possibility? And what other options can we give women if they're really wanting to get that weight off and they've tried everything else out there? We want to give them a possibility. And right now, there's not a lot of options that women are hearing about, except for Ozempic or semaglutide or Wegovy or tirzepatide, any of those.
Well, and then right, circling the drain, like feeling frustrated or feeling if they've tried it and then gained the weight back. I have a client in my practice now who was prescribed it by another provider, 2 years ago. And then, she was on it for a year and then was off it for a year. And so she was back where she started, and she had so much trauma around that, feeling a failure. She's 65 years old, and she's just had this sense like she was a failure. So it was fascinating, but I had her actually work with a ketamine psychiatrist, a psychiatrist that does ketamine and also integrative therapy. And as like worked on cleaning up her gut and empowering her immune system and doing all these, creating more insulin sensitivity. But like that was a powerful, I mean, just that was a powerful fix too. To feel empowered and like that uh, being able to reset ourselves. For me, it's a constant practice to focus on the positive, focus on what I'm grateful for. And thinking of things that increase oxytocin. And I have to say that, Marcel, that your ballroom dancing pictures and videos, you've got to send me one to post with this
Oh, sure.
episode
I'll be glad to.
because
Sure.
yeah, that's amazing. So for exercise and activity, you're beautiful hiking and walking, but tell us about your dancing too.
So I got into dancing when I was married at the time for 27 years, and he left. We were going to do a separation, and I wanted touch without strings. So I started dancing. and I became addicted. I thought, oh my God, I've died and gone to heaven. So it's really a meditation. When I'm on the dance floor, I can't think of anything else. Otherwise, I'm going to trip my partner or I'm going to fall. And I go to Florida for January, February, and March every year, and I'm going again in January. And I dance 2 and 3 hours, 5 nights a week. So I'm either doing ballroom dancing, I'm doing East or West Coast swing, I'm doing Argentine tango, and I'm doing Latin. So I'm dancing a lot, and I love it. It's amazing. And I do some of it in Maine. Last weekend there were 3 different dances, so I do some of it. It's just small, there's less people here, but it's my way of meditating, honestly, Anna, and it's my way of being connected, And there are no, it's a 2 minute conversation or a 3 minute conversation, and in Florida they have 400 and 500 people at a time, so
Wow.
it's pretty busy, and a lot of people. There are a lot of people that are in their 80s and 90s still dancing. And I did compete. I've decided I'm going to compete again probably next year. So the video I'll send you is one of the competitions I did. So I'll send it to you.
And can I share your age? Can because you're inspirational. Like, in your
70s. I know I don't say that to too many people. I can't believe it myself, but yeah.
I mean, stunning. I'm in person, stunning and agile and active and, you know, 2, 3 hours of dancing a day. I mean, it's just like that's inspirational for us, Marcelle. And in so many ways, you've been inspiration to so many practitioners, so many women, so many people and families around the world. So your work is and truly has been incredible. And there is something to be said for time-tested wisdom, right? Because we have seen the hype, we've seen the trends, we've seen, we've seen the fluctuation. So we think, okay, and what is the safest for the people that I am taking care of? And I care about everyone,
Mhm.
right? So what is the safest for them? So I really want to congratulate you on your work and 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 I want to invite my audience to check you out. We're going to put a pretty link up here. So just dranna.com/Marcelle, dranna.com/Marcelle. And we're going to give you information for her weight loss resistance program that she has. And there's, again, her books are amazing. Tired or Wired is one of your books. Is It Me or My Hormones is another one of your books. I mean, just so much content and information to share. So thank you. And, again, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
In this episode, we've touched on adrenal fatigue. We've touched on hormone imbalance, touched on weight loss resistance, stubborn weight loss resistance, and discussion on GLP-1s. And it's important to voice and to share opposing views too when it comes to that and the medications. And not everyone's going to agree. But what's important is that our body's empowered and we're doing things as safely as possible. And, you know, this medicine is evolving over time. But traditional medicines have been around for, you know, what, millennia. So we want to look at the integrative approach always and address the underlying issues that are causing the problems, or we will have consequences with GLP-1s for sure. And being careful is one thing, but addressing underlying physiology, freeing the body, mind, spirit is transformative overall. So with this, with information this episode, my goal is that you feel more empowered, more aware of what's happening in your body and able to ask that question, putting your Nancy Drew hat on and doing the detective work to get to the underlying issues that may be tripping you up here and there and to take your next right step. So I thank you so much for being here. We will put all the links in the show notes. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get the word out. It helps us continue to do what we're doing. So I thank you for being part of the Girlfriend Doctor community. This is Dr. Anna Cabeca. Till next time, God bless you.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Girlfriend Doctor podcast. Check out all the links below for more.